drone attack on Israel by Hezbollah. Now, the airport was closed. It does appear to be going back to normal, and authorities have ramped up alertness here on the home front, limiting gatherings and restricting recreational activities too. Now, Hezbollah firing 150 rockets towards northern Israel in an hour. Just to give you an idea, at one of the most intense firings we've seen in July, that was 200 rockets in one day. So that gives you an idea of the scale we're talking about. Now, Hezbollah saying that this is in response to an assassination of one of its top military commanders, Fuad Shukur, several weeks ago. What we do understand is that Hezbollah has said it will strike military targets inside Israel, but we don't know exactly what that means. They said that there will be a response coming soon.
Britt, what is it like there right now, and what are you hearing from Israeli officials on the ground?
Well, it's very early here right now. It does seem fairly calm, although I'm sure people who are up have been told that they need to be in a state of heightened awareness. What we do know is that Biden has spoken with counterparts and that Biden is closely monitoring the situation. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has spoken to Yoav Gallant, the Israeli defense minister here, and he's been briefed on the situation and been told basically to keep regional tensions at a reasonable level, and hopefully we won't see any further escalation.
All right, Britt Clennett in Israel for us. Thank you so much. Let's now turn to our ABC News contributor and former State Department official, Steve Ganyard. Steve, thank you for joining us. Steve, how does this affect ceasefire and hostage talks that are set for today in Cairo?
Well, Katrina, they put them on hold. Obviously, those talks will go on today. Hamas has said that they won't participate. But I think what's interesting to watch as this evolves this morning is to look at what kind of response Hezbollah is throwing at Israel. We know that the Hezbollah has far more than 150,000 rockets and missiles. Some of those rockets and missiles have precision guidance kits. So Israel's concern was that Hezbollah would attack targets in central Israel, in the population centers, go after critical infrastructure like water and power. They made it very clear to Hezbollah that if they did that, Israel would go after targets deep within Lebanon. So it's going to be very interesting to watch just how far Hezbollah goes. Now, so far, the missile warnings and impact areas we've seen this morning are all in the north. So we're not seeing any long-range strikes into central Israel. Now, that may be because the Israeli defenses are taking out those longer-range missiles, or it may mean that Hezbollah is just doing almost a perfunctory response. They'll throw lots of missiles into the north and the less populated areas. But the whole idea here is that Hezbollah knows that if they get too close to population centers, if they push the Israelis too far, that the Israelis may move militarily into Lebanon and push Hezbollah north of the Litani River. So Hezbollah knows that pushing too hard can result in a much broader fight. And remember that Hezbollah is a political entity in Lebanon and doesn't want to upset its role in the Lebanese government. So it's a very delicate dance here for Hezbollah to respond to the killing of its senior leadership, but not push so hard that Israel is forced to respond by going into Lebanon and taking on a ground fight against Hezbollah.
And Steve, Hezbollah and Israeli forces have been trading attacks for months now. So how significant an escalation is this compared to some of those other attacks?
Well, we also have to see how the preemptive attack this morning, which we saw over 40 different strikes by Israeli forces, both artillery and by the Israeli Air Force, against Hezbollah targets where they knew that Hezbollah was putting their rocket launchers together and preparing for a strike on Israel. So how much of that preemptive attack stopped the major effort by Hezbollah. We won't know for a while, but so far 150 is quite a large number, probably the largest number in recent history. Remember that the Iron Dome has been intercepting most of those, but it's a matter of how many Iron Dome missiles there are versus how many Hezbollah were launched. Certainly there are more Hezbollah missiles than there are Iron Dome interceptors, and so at some point this becomes a very dangerous attrition game for Hezbollah in Israel.
All right, Steve Ganyard, thank you so much. And let's turn now to ABC senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez. Does this latest aggression, in your opinion, embolden Iran?
I think it does in a way because we have been waiting for some kind of Iranian retaliation for what they believe was Israel targeting the top political leader of Hamas in Tehran just a few weeks ago. They have vowed revenge, and I think one of the things that really we have to keep an eye on right now is whether they are going to enable their what we call proxy groups. These are these Iranian-backed militias, let's say in Iraq and Syria, that have been attacking U.S. bases, or the Houthis who are continuing their attacks in the Red Sea. Does this mean they're going to encourage them to launch even further attacks now? Or is this potentially a trigger for them to continue now to carry out their threat, which is to attack Israel? So it's really one of those things where I think you have to look at and see exactly where the situation is going to develop. As of right now, it's just a few hours old, and it's really hard to tell exactly where it's going. But I think in one way it does embolden Iran just because they may want to strike back at Israel for striking at one of its major proxies, which is Hezbollah. And we know that Hezbollah has a ton of capability, thousands of rockets, which have short range and long range capability. And yeah, Israel does have its Iron Dome, but as Steve Ganyard just pointed out, there are some limitations.
Well, tensions are certainly heightened there at the moment after this latest round of strikes. Louis, the U.S. has sent more military assets to the region in recent weeks, hoping to deter potential retaliation. What role do you think the U.S. plays in defending Israel at this point?
One of the things that I've heard over the last week or so is about whether if Hezbollah was going to strike in retaliation for the strike against their leader inside of Beirut around that same time frame as what happened in Tehran. One of the things I heard was that the United States was more concerned about what happens if Iran should strike directly at Israel. Doesn't mean that the United States is not as firm in its what they call their ironclad commitment to defending Israel. But I think that the bigger picture, I think one of the concerns has been in making sure that there are assets in place. We're talking planes, we're talking ships, that can shoot down any incoming threat from from Iran. And so that's why you've seen now we have 2 aircraft carriers in the Middle East right now. You saw these destroyers that were being rushed alongside those carriers as well. They bring the capability. We know that there's a submarine that's being sent into the Middle East. We know that there were additional squadrons of fighter jets that were sent to the Middle East to be a deterrent. Because back in April, when Iran did launch hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel, 99% of them were shot down, and they were shot down by incoming air defense systems like the Iron Dome, which belongs to Israel, and also because the United States and other countries, including Israel, shot down some of those drones as they flew over Jordan. And don't forget that I think 1 destroyer or 2 destroyers actually launched 5 or 6 missiles that shot down some of those ballistic missiles. So the United States has come to the defense of Israel, as they did notably in April. But I think with the threat with Hezbollah, it's a much shorter range, it's a much shorter distance, and that is better suited for the Iron Dome system. That's that air defense system that Israel has that is really good. It's just shooting down incoming fires at a short range. And they also have a higher system, which is called David Sling, which can attack higher level incoming ballistic missiles. So Israel has the capability, but I think the United States more focused right now on a potential threat against Iran, even though the statement that you're going to see tonight from Defense Secretary Austin talks about preserving the ironclad commitment for Israel's defense.
Okay, ABC senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez, thank you so much for that insight. I want to bring back Steve Ganyard at this point. And Steve, just get your perspective on negotiations that are set to take place today. They're high level. Hamas supposed to have a delegation there, but not necessarily participating in the talks directly.
Yeah, it's become quite a frustration for the United States, which Secretary Blinken obviously has been pushing quite hard to get to an agreement, to a ceasefire agreement. But you can't, when both the parties don't seem to be in the mood for an agreement, it's hard to get an agreement. And right now, neither Israel nor Hamas wants to budge. And so you'll have the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar at the table, but you're not going to get much done unless, the Israelis and Hamas are active participants. And right now, there's nothing forcing either side to make a decision. So I don't know that what we're seeing this morning here on the border of Lebanon with Hezbollah is going to have any effect on those negotiations because, again, Hezbollah is like Hamas is a proxy of Iran, but not directly involved in Hamas. So I think that this will be a bit of a sideshow, but I'm just not seeing the kind of movement or the kinds of indications that there's movement or at least progress towards an agreement that's going to show progress or show results here anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's frustrating everyone. All right, Steve Ganyard, thank you so much for that. And I want to go back to Britt Clennett in Israel. And Britt, tell us what we can expect next, because tensions are so high. Civilians are so weary from this ongoing war that's raging. What happens next?
Doesn't expect it to.
Well, that's a good question. It depends how far either side is willing to go. At the moment, it does appear to be military-to-military targets. We know that Hezbollah says it's fired 320 rockets into northern Israel, but it does seem to be restricted to southern Lebanon and northern Israel right now. Hezbollah said they are striking military targets with drones and missiles, saying the military operation would take some time to complete. Dozens of Israeli jets, meanwhile, hitting targets in southern Lebanon. Hagari saying that the defense is not airtight and warning civilians here in Israel, Karina, to stay on alert and to be careful.
All of this happening as those high-level summit talks expected to happen later Sunday. All right, we will leave it there. Britt Clennett, Steve Ganyard, and Louis Martinez, thank you so much. I'm Karina Mitchell. The news never stops, and neither do we. We'll have much more on this throughout the day, right here on ABC News Live. Stay with us.
This has been a special report from ABC News. They both want to be your next president. Now, finally, Kamala Harris.
Do we believe in the promise of America?
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face, historic. The ABC News presidential debate, moderated by David Muir and Lindsay Davis. Tuesday, September 10th, live on ABC and streaming on ABC News Live, Hulu, and Disney+. The ABC News presidential debate.